There's a lot of focus on monitoring these days, and that's very interesting because that's what we needed, and that's what we started with putting together a standard in the first place, because we saw the need for actually accountability and demonstrating what was happening. So we are very happy to see that that's the direction these days, that we know what's happening. What we see is that there is a lot of focus on satellite monitoring, for example, which is great, and knowing what are the areas, what are the number of hectares, what is the tree cover density, for example, these kind of things. And that's great. We still want to support that effort by bringing the field verification, the field monitoring, because we see that there's many things that cannot be monitored by satellite imagery, for example, and that's governance, for example. How do you monitor governance? How do you monitor gender equality? How do you monitor labor rights? These kind of things. So we have worked in a number of projects now for which these aspects were the ones that were crucial for actually have a successful monitoring restoration effort. So, for example, in one case in Kenya, the issue was what was the tree cover, how it was to going to stand to herbivores and cattle. So behind there was a human-wildlife conflict, of course, with cattle and herds, and that conflict with the herbivores, the wildlife. But besides that, in reality, the conflict or the big issue of the project was actually governance, and within that, gender equality. So how were the interests of the woman were going to be taken into account so that the restoration project was successful, and that was important in terms of health, for example, or birth conditions, or things like that. These things that were the ones that were important were actually needed to be brought to the front line, so that all the rest of the restoration initiatives, all the money that was invested also in that part, so that the project was successful at the end. That's just one example. Other examples, in Madagascar, for example, we've been auditing a project, and one of the key issues was empowerment by the communities themselves for leading the project once the funding was going to leave, or the organizations at the beginning that were starting the project were going to go somewhere else. What was going to happen there? Because we know that restoration projects are long-term initiatives. They're going to stand for decades, for centuries even. So you need to empower and engage with the community from start, so that they really take ownership of the project. And you need to monitor that as well if you want to be successful. So we see like the different components that the different organizations are bringing are very important. So satellite imagery is key. Field monitoring is key as well. We need to, that's how we envision restoration, where the whole community, the different parts are putting their bit, so that we can bring each organization our bit and keep going to successful UN decade. So what we're proposing is first a standard that it's relatively simple, so that people can first consider what's needed in terms of planning, then rights, tenure, all the social part, implementation, and then monitoring. So simple standards, so that the projects can wrap their mind and check themselves what's missing from what they've been doing and how they can improve. But the second bit that we're proposing is to have an accountability system, so a framework, so that the projects can be audited. They can be audited by themselves or by peer parts or something, but they can also be audited by third party like ourselves. We've been auditing land use projects for over 25 years now. So we have that experience into checking what's happening in the field, how that match with what a what is people understanding from what's happening, and how that matches with the documentation that has been produced. So triangulating these three things is key to make sure that projects are well built and working well. We can do that, and we do that through field visits, where we engage with a number of stakeholders. We do a lot of interviews, we check what's in the field, and then we get the picture of what's happening in a relatively short exercise, but that gives us a good picture of what are the problems, what's working well, and so on. And then we're converting that into a report that is publicly posted in a website, where people can check the summary and understand what are the issues. With that, people can follow up on what's important for these projects. They can learn also from what has happened, what has worked and what has failed in other projects. And drawing these lessons, it's very important for generating this knowledge. But also funders or organizations that are interested in collaborating with these projects from a nature-based solutions perspective, for example, or just because they want to fund initiatives that are positive, either in social, environmental points of view, then they can know what's happening and eventually help solve these issues as well.